probably been getting tired of me talking about the Spirit and the need to have more Spirit in our lives in the church and everything we do. But here I am, starting off with a sermon titled that "When It Is Good to Be Poor," talking about the Spirit. Yes and no. We'll get to the Holy Spirit momentarily, but what I'm talking about today is our spirit. You know that old idea we have of what makes us who we are? Our body, our mind, our soul. I mean, different cultures have looked at it different ways, but this is just generally how we formulate who we are. And this is what Christ is talking about when he says we have to be poor in spirit. It's kind of heavy, because he's talking about getting rid of what makes us who we are, or part of what makes us who we are. And why would he start out with this? Why is this one so important? Why do we need to do this? Why do we need to get rid of any spirit that we have? Because when we think of spirit, we think of good, right? Unless it's evil spirit, but generally when we think about our spirit, we don't think about evil. Well, the reason it's first is because this is the cornerstone on which the rest of the Sermon on the Mount is built. If you can't lose that spirit, lose all the stuff that's in your spirit that keeps you from God, well, you're not going to do any of the rest of that stuff. We talk about being poor in spirit, but this is actually a good thing, because when we're poor in spirit, the stuff that separates us from God doesn't do that anymore. The spirit we have has to be poor. And in the Greek, when they say poor, they mean reduced to a beggar kind of poor, as in essentially having nothing in spirit. Now you remember a few months ago I talked about riches. What's the problem with riches? There's nothing wrong with having money, as long as what? It doesn't separate you from God. It doesn't become a God. And this is where Jesus is going with the whole being poor in spirit. There's nothing wrong with having a spirit, as long as it's not keeping you from God, as long as that's not your God. We can be pursuing our busy lives and forgetting why we're even here, why we're even here to have a life. Just like riches can distract us, just like we can think the whole point of being here is to get stuff, well, we may think we have it within ourselves, within our spirit, to save ourselves. But salvation is something that we can do on our own. I mean, we may believe on an intellectual level that we need this Jesus guy, but it can't just be in our mind. We have to realize on every level, our body even has to long for God. Our soul has to long for God. Our spirit has to long for God. And everything that keeps us from that longing, everything that keeps us from that relationship, it needs to be thrown away. And, when we first throw away stuff, it's kind of sorrowful. That's why I hate cleaning stuff. That's why I don't like spring cleaning. It's like, well, I know I haven't used this in 12 years, but if I get rid of it, I won't have it anymore. Well, no matter how much stuff we have, no matter how awesome we think we are, we're really nothing without God. I was reading the call of Peter in Luke 5. Yep, there's 3 different versions, but this one's my favorite. Because when he finally realizes who this Jesus guy is that's calling him, he's like, "Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man. He's upset because he realizes that this awesome guy, Simon, is so awesome. That this awesome guy is in big trouble, and he's afraid to even come near Christ. He's afraid to talk to Christ because here's him, and here's Christ. And see, this is my favorite story of the calling of Simon, because we see that Jesus cares about each one of us and what's going on with us. Because he says, don't be afraid. From now on, you're going to be catching people. We see in Peter's struggle that he gets it. I mean, he knows. He knows that he needs Jesus. He knows that he wants to serve Jesus. But then he kind of stops getting it. Then he gets it again. But then he gets the Spirit. And the rest is history. And see, when Peter was called, he was still Simon. Simon knew enough to take the first step. He was afraid. He realized that, Jesus is the real deal. And he was far from ready to serve him. And see, fear is a great motivator. Fear can show us exactly what's important. And I mean, I remember the first time I got shot at. That puts a lot of things in perspective very quickly. Number one, you're not bulletproof. Number two, man, this is bad. This is scary. And see, it wasn't so much scary being shot at, it was realizing that I just exposed myself to getting shot at again to even get out of the situation. So, think being naked in front of a crowd. And they all got guns. Ooh. But that's the fear that we need to confront our sinful nature. We need to realize that without Christ, we are just as doomed as if we were being shot at. Life and death. And that's why I say this whole idea of proclaiming the gospel is life and death, because it's not just mortal life. Like if I'd truly been shot, if the person had made the mark that evening, I'd just be dead. But as a Christian, my life would just be beginning. But if I wasn't, that'd be the end. And that's even scarier to think about. This fear, we need to confront our sinful nature, to get rid of it. We need to die to sin. We need to stop being who we are as a sinner and live again in Christ. Fear is awesome because it makes us not worry about formality, dignity, pride, our status, or what have you, and focus on the things that keeps us out of the fire. Christ. We have to die to sin, and that can be painful, that can be scary. But through time, we see the process of Simon being raised as Peter in new life. Ups and downs, yes, but that's the human condition, apparently. But we see in Pentecost, we see that his spirit was open to receive the Holy Spirit. And there was no turning back after that. John Wesley said that true humility is a kind of self-annihilation. That's a big word. It just means that you got to kill it. You got to kill the self. And this is the center of all virtues. And I would task you to read the Sermon on the Mount again. You You can't have mercy as long as you don't realize that you need Christ's mercy to live. You can't have all the things and the Beatitudes without dying to sinful self. And see, that's one thing that I loved about Buddhism. For all it being not Christian, it brought me to Christ. Because in Buddhism, there is no concept of self. Self is an illusion. There is no you. You are not you. There is no I. I like to say, anybody ever heard that there is no I in team? Well, there's really no I in Buddhism, even though there is one after the H, but there's no concept of I, that you are trying, this whole idea, it's a myth, it's a construct, and you have to tear that away to the point where you don't even begin sentences with I, because there is no you, and you realize that, and that is one of the steps to salvation. But unlike Christianity and salvation, you want nothing. And in Christianity, you want God. And so it was this attempt to strip away the self by meditating, by leaving the self, if you will, behind, out into this unknown, this nothingness, that I actually found Christ. For real. I mean, I knew on the intellectual level because I'd grown up in the church. But, yeah, I didn't believe enough to kind of stay away. But in the clarity that only came through that meditation, did I find that in the emptiness, it wasn't that there was nothing. God's there. And see, it wasn't the fact that life and the universe is all emptiness. There is nowhere, even when we're running away from God, that God isn't. So really, the only thing that Buddhism accomplished was to clear away all the junk that was keeping me away from God, that was keeping me away from knowing Christ. You see, the poverty means that because there is nothing in ourselves that is keeping us from God, that our spirit be with God's spirit. I liken it to clouds. You know, especially this time of year, I'll mention it probably about every week. It's like, what do you know? 4 days without sunshine again. And see, what infuriates me sometimes, what really gets me angry is I'll look up and see that the clouds are only like 1,000 feet above me, and I'll know that it's nice and sunny like Florida up there. All I got to do is get 1,000 more feet. That's how our spirit is. When we let the clouds in, it's not that God's not there. We're just keeping this little bit of stuff. But if we get rid of, if we push away those clouds, the sun's there, it's a bright day. If we push away those clouds, in our soul, in our spirit, God's right there. Because you see, that's why we do all the praying and Bible study and reading the Bible and fasting and all this stuff. It's to get rid of this stuff in our spirit that is keeping us from God. It's not so we can be cool. It's not so we can be better than everybody else. It's so we can get rid of the clouds so the sun can shine. Not the S-U-N, the S-O-N. So that Christ can shine in our spirits. We may be poor in spirit, but we're rich in God. We're rich in salvation. One of the biggest problems in the church today, and really the biggest problem that we're going to face as Christians, is forgetting our role, forgetting the hierarchy. We're thinking that we're better, that we know better than God. Again, mentioned before, God's up here, we're down here. He's the one we need to know what to do. And much like a cloudy day, it annoys me when I read about this plan for splitting up the church, where my first thought was like, well, who are you guys to tell the church how they're going to split up? And I mean, you know the story because I've told it. It's a bunch of bishops. It's a famous lawyer. And I say again, who are you guys to tell the church what it's going to do? I think that needs to be God. In fact, I know it needs to be God through the Holy Spirit. And there's nothing where any one of them talked about asking the Holy Spirit what it wanted the church to do. Or them as a group asking what wanted the Holy Spirit to do. But they figured, I know what they figured because, I'm a bishop. I know better. I'm a lawyer. I've mediated all this stuff. And I'm not ragging on the guy who's a lawyer. He can't help it. But even though, you may be a famous lawyer, you may be a famous bishop, you may be a great bishop, there's God up there, and then there's the rest of us. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom. And when we forget who we are, that we are poor without God, then we get in trouble. Not just as a big church, but even as a little church and as individuals. Because as I said, it's only getting away from all this stuff, thinking we know better than God, that we can realize that only God knows us. Only God knows what we need to do. That should be the first stop, not the last stop. Not the stop that we ignore because we know better. Remember how I said the Spirit gives us life. God breathed into us. That's what got us here. We were dirt before God breathed life into us. And I think that's what we tend to forget. That without God, we're dirt. But God brought His Spirit into us to give us life. You see, God's Spirit, the Holy Spirit, is the part of God that's closest to us. And our spirit, if you think about it, is the part of us that's closest to God. That's all Jesus is saying. We got to get those two together. Otherwise, we're not alive. Otherwise, nothing else can happen. Nothing good. Amen.